We will start again from the top. Veyesh lomar. So what we have essentially come up with, what we have concluded in this whole discussion, is that after the tzimtzum, when the oyer comes in a hamshocha manner, hamshocha means it is drawn from a source to be recognized at a so outside of its source. In that hamshocha state, even in the oil there is already sphirot, there's qualities, identifiable qualities. Even though it's still blima and so forth, it's not like the kelim, but nonetheless, even within the oil there are qualities, and this is why the term achlifu duchtaihu, that the oiris can exchange their places, is applicable, which means oil chesed b'kli hagvura and vice versa, because the oil also has a defining element. And as we have tried to focus in on that, there could be a defining element in oil without keli. Keli is a presentation, has a presence within, in our terms, within a worldly context. Oil does not have a presence in a worldly context. But nonetheless, there is a statement, like we said, hamshocha, that when in our moshel, when you are in the company of the host, so all you have is the host, but then there is an additional inyan that the host actually pays attention to you, looks at you. This is the hamshocha for the host, and in that there are qualities. This is the way we try to kind of provide a means to relate to this. But the most important inyan that we discussed yesterday is a clear distinction between kelim and oiris. I said again, in kelim, the effect is within the context where they are in the worldly context. Oiros have a presence only in relating to the source. Veyesh lomar. Now, after having explained this, to further elaborate, we can say shezehu gam kein inyan es sphirot hagnusis b'ma'atzilo. That this inyan, that in the oiros there's es sphirot, that this is also the principle that is referred to as es sphirot hagnusis, the contained, the treasured es sphirot, that are contained in their treasure, b'ma'atzilon, within their source. Ba'oil soiv shelifnei hatzimtzum. That in the oil soiv shelifnei hatzimtzum there is also es sphirot, but they are called es sphirot hagnusis. They do not express themselves at all. And yet there is the inyan of es sphirot. We shall get to this and try to kind of identify what is meant in this. And that is to say, that even while the kav is still kolul means included, and is part of. And what is it part of? The oil as it is before the tzimtzum. And this is called oil ein sof. And as we had already discussed, you have to understand, to whatever degree we can understand, oil ein sof does not mean an oil that extends to a great length of ein sof. Because anything that is extended, anything that is cumulative, is by definition not ein sof. You cannot have an accumulation that is infinite. Because if you accumulate any number of finites, it will never be infinite. Oyer ein sof means that it is essentially, not by accumulation, not by extension, but by definition, it is ein sof. In our mashalim, we have means by which, within our context, within the limit of our perception, we have things that we can allude to and say, oh, this is relative to this is ein sof, such as daylight versus a projected light. A projected light has a finite definition. It shines upon an object that makes it possible to see the object. Daylight does not have that definition. It is the encompassment of light per se. And it cannot be defined as functionally. All this light is that it makes it possible to see. It's not a functional presence. It's an essential presence. And thus day and night are two distinct states. Not functionally, but by state itself. Each one has a name of its own. Not only does it have a name, but that name was given to it by the Creator Himself. As we explained, the human being, the human mind cannot really comprehend this kind of a reality. And that's why these things were named by God Himself. Day and night. This is called oil ein sof, relative to in our environment. Within this oil ein sof element, there is, as he says, there is contained a kav. What does a kav mean? A kav means that this oil can be expressed in a focused in a focused beam, in a focused message that comes from its source and extends further down. This kav is not ein sof. but it comes from the Ein Sof, and it is expressing what is contained in the Ein Sof. Again, coming back to our mashal of daylight certainly, at least in our meager, limited way, or we appreciate it. Yes, definitely, daylight shines upon all objects and makes it possible for us to see. But nobody is going to be limited daylight by defining it as that which illuminates objects. There is a much truer and it is correct even to say a limitless quality to it. But from there we can draw a functional element also. This functional element is contained within that undefined and undefinable reality of light. But in order for it to be identified and identifiable, it has to be drawn from it. To allow for the state of absence of light, in order to appreciate the effect of light. And this is what he says, that there is sphirot hagnusis ma'atzilon b'oyin sof shel lifnei hatzimtzum. The oyin sof shel lifnei hatzimtzum, before the tzimtzum, there is no a provision for light, for godly presence. The godly presence was present because God is present, not by any kind of provision. This is before the tzimtzum. And therefore, it is an union of Ayin Sof. Like we have presented it to our limited perception. We said that to be in the presence of this host is very significant. So that the host can, as he said, he bestows his kindness and his greatness upon us. He looks and he shows interest and so forth. This is all in the form of hamshocha, of a kav. But then there is a completely different state, as we said yesterday. If we are invited in to be within his domain, like we said in the example of being a guest at his simcha, at his son's wedding. There, their relationship is not via any kind of an expression. We are part of the greatness of his presence itself. Being in that environment, being in that domain, cannot be explained expressed even by the fact that, I saw the chosna, I saw the challah, I saw the host. It was a complete. It's a complete encompassment in the reality of the moment. Particularly, as I said, if you are invited in. So therefore, you are actually given that mandate, that right to be there. There it is. There the relationship is without defining edges, without borders. This is like a means for us to conceive, of oire in soif shel lifnei hatzimtzum. So he says that in the oil in soif shel lifnei hatzimtzum, shayach boy, within that oil is applicable to refer to as sphirot hagnuzos. The 10 sphirot hagnuzos that are contained within that oil. Sheheim shoroshei ha'oiros, which are in fact shoroshei ha'oiros, the roots for the oiros. This is a very important kind of definition. Throughout this whole learning, the emphasis is made on the relationship of the source of the oiros, rather than the oiros as they are at the state of Gilui when they're expressed. It's important to understand the principle that whatever occurs, whatever reveals on a further down on a functional level is not created at the functional level. This is where we are always prone to make this misunderstanding. The functional level is not in answer to a shortcoming, to a need. And thus I have provision to provide for it. Like we say all the time, a table is not merely because I have to have a cup and I can't hold it in my hand, so I enable myself the ability to take off the burden of holding the cup. In that respect, it does not have any source in the human's presence itself. It's a circumstantial need, and it is provided at that level. It's not reflective of anything deeper and the source of the human being. And the whole time we are pointing out that this is exactly what we're trying to overcome. That there is an essential source for everything that occurs further down. And the essential source is within the essence itself. We pointed out way back when that when we teach a child to eat with a spoon, this is not training the child to do something that it cannot relate to. Rather, the child, even at that stage, understands fully what this is about. And not only it understands, feels comfortable with it. Because it relates to it. Oh yeah, That's right. Because all things that human beings do at whatever further down stage is rooted in the essence of the human being. Like we said yesterday, you build a wagon or a car, pardon me, seemingly because there is a demand you need to get around. But that is not the full story. Because the demand of getting around has not been created at the point of need. It's projected by the human being himself. He, in his mind, encompasses the whole world. And this is what creates the need to get around. And therefore, when he does get around and he moves around, he's not out of his domain, out of his natural state. He knows exactly what's happening, and he relates to it. So this is sphirot hagnusis, hem shoroshei ha'oiros. They're the roots of the oiros. So that as far as oiros can go, it can be traced back, and it has a root in at the highest level before the tzimtzum. The Pardes Kosav, the Pardes writes,
what? Can I ask? It says the Yoisa HaKaf Kulu. Is it the Kaf or is it the oil Shliffen HaTzimtzum?
Noch einmal, the Kaf is Kolu in the oil Shliffen HaTzimtzum.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. The Pardes Kosav, the Pardes writes, Shoes sphirot hagnusos, hein shoroshei hakelim. A different perspective, a different way of defining sphirot hagnusos. These sphirot hagnusos, they contained and concealed sphirot. So the Pardes writes that they are the roots for the kelim, rather than the oilers. What is the significance of this difference? We say that this is shoroshei ha'oiros. The Pardes says that there is a sphirot hagnusos shoroshei hakelim. What is this difference about? I know. However, the pshat is this: Im neimar, if we say shehoiros yes sphirot, that the oiros that ultimately are mislabish in the kelim of sphirot. If we would say that these oiros are mislabish in the kelim, hein bli mahus legamri, are totally without a mahus, without a presence, without a reality. There is no oir per se, a definition of oir. And all definitions in oir come as a result of the oil touching the keli. But the sphirot are bli mahus legamri. When does it become a sphira? When does it become defined as chesed and gvura or chochma? That is when it is mislabish in the keli. This is sort of the approach that says that when it has to effectuate this union, that's when it becomes defined as such. But before that, it has no such a definition. So if we say that the oiros are bli mahus legamri, are totally without any self-identification, kumoi ha'oiro soif, Just like the Oyer in Soif, Shalamai lo lagam lememhus as sphirot, that is totally above of the mahus, of the present, of the reality of sphirot. Oyer in Soif itself is totally above mahus as sphirot. It's a completely different reality. The oil in Soif is the oil that's reflective of the etzem itself. And the etzem is without any defining factors. And so too is the oil in Soif. So then, what is the oiros that are ultimately mislabish in the kelim? The oiros come from this oil in Soif. So therefore, there is a perception that perhaps the oiros themselves that come into the kelim are also like the oil in Soif, without any defining element. In our misholim, in our means of kind of perceiving this kind of a thing, we have, as we said, we have daylight. As we said many times, daylight is a superworldly presence. Daylight was created before the sun was created. It is not a drawn light. It is a light that is a presence in and of itself. From that daylight, you can draw specific effects, functional effects. But those functional effects are drawn from it. It itself is without any defining element. It cannot be identified as on a functional level. So now this is what daylight is about. So therefore, the Pali says, the oiros are drawn from the oil in Soif that is completely without a mahusas sphirot. Therefore, there is no defining element in these oilos. So then, al korchoch tzorich lomar. So then, we are forced to say, yes, sphirot hagnuzes, heim sheroshi hakelim. Therefore, if we say that there are sphirot gnuzos, they are concealed, they contain sphirot in the oil in Soif, it has to be that these sphirot are sheroshi hakelim, because oils do not have a defining element. So therefore, this is what permits ultimately there to be kelim.
How is it shocking to say after to do fire?
No. Okay, that remains a question. According to this, it remains a question. There was an allusion to an answer, but that essentially remains a question. However, but according to what we are saying here, that even in the oilers of the sphirot, the oilers that are mislabish in the kelim, yesh lehem shaychus of chokhmah of chesed. They have a shaychus to a defining element of chokhmah versus chesed. That was the oilers also. There are 10 qualities in oilers. Rak shenikra bli ma, except that the oilers are called bli ma, without a presence. Legabe hakelim des sphirot. Relative to the kelim of sphirot, they are bli ma, but not in and themselves. Imke, and therefore, according to what we are concluding here, that the oiros of the spheros do have a defining element, except that we're saying the blim are relative to the therefore, there, as a spheros hagnuzis, according to this view, the as a spheros hagnuzis shalamayla mehoshimu, they concealed as a spheros that are contained in the oil soif before the tzimtzum. Heim shoroshi ha'oiros as a spheros atzilus. They're actually the root of the oiros rather than the cave. As we said before, anything that surfaces at some further point has to have a place in the source. Otherwise, it is not really a reality. It's not reflective of the truth. So therefore, when we say if we have the oiros that they do have a defining element, their root then would be in the sphirot hagnuzis. Okay. So this is the sphirot as they are contained in the Oyin Soif. Just a few more words. Abel ha'Oyin Soif atzmoi, but the Oyin Soif itself, afilu ha'Oyin ve'hagilu min ha'atzmos. Even though this is a gilui from atzmos, they're not going further. Even that oil agilum eho atzmus, even though it's a gilum in atzmus, is totally without any defining element. This will pick up mission tomorrow.